Welcome to the Prison Professors Podcast. My co-founders are Sean Hopwood and Justin Paperny. My name is Michael Santos. Members of our team served lengthy terms in prison and we came back successfully. We create podcasts to show how strategies in prison can lead to success. Visit us at prisonprofessors.com to learn more. Welcome to Prison Professors. I am Michael Santos, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to Jeff Abramowitz. He is an individual who went to prison, and while he was there, he used his time to learn about steps that people could take inside to come back successfully. Then when he came back from prison, he began carving pathways that would help formerly incarcerated people get into the job market. And so I think we can all learn a lot from Jeff, and I want to welcome you to our program, Jeff. It would be awesome if you would just tell our audience a little bit about your background and what it was that brought you into the criminal justice system.
Good morning, Michael, and thanks for having me. So my name's Jeff Abramowitz. I'm from Philadelphia. I live in Philadelphia. I was born here. I was a trial lawyer in Philadelphia for about 20 years. I practiced in both the federal and state courts and was also licensed before the United States Supreme Court, and was a senior partner in a law firm. For a long time, I was very successful, relatively successful in the field, very active in the legal community, and I made some very poor choices in my life about 10 years ago. Now, those choices landed a federal indictment in Philadelphia, which I took responsibility for, my actions, and pled guilty to 3 charges, a wire fraud and mail fraud and a tax evasion charge. And was sentenced on March 12th, 2012 to a 5-year sentence in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
So what was that like, to be somebody who is a distinguished member of the bar, respected by judges and prosecutors and other colleagues, and then find yourself in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system? Walk us through, because a lot of people go into the prison system, as you know, and they start spinning out of control, wondering where their life is going to go. In your case, it must have been even different because you had trained for decades to be in that role. Tell us a little bit about how you coped with that.
It was an incredible experience. And, they say that the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born, and many people say the day you die. I believe it's actually the day that you figure out why you were born. And for me, that came up March 12th of 2012 when the judge's gavel struck wood. At that moment in time, I was standing in front of a packed courtroom of media, my colleagues, my friends, my family, and I wasn't standing there as a trial lawyer, but as a defendant. And it was kind of surreal. But when the judge's gavel struck, there was something inside that just went off in my head that said, that your past journey was over and that something incredible was about to happen to you. And I needed to figure out why it was happening so it could never happen again. And sort of try and learn all the lessons that I could that were being handed to me. And boy, did I learn a lot. But standing in that courtroom, I remember as the handcuffs went on and my belt came off and my wedding band and my wallet came out, and I was taken right into custody there in the courtroom. I was ashamed. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. And in a funny kind of way, I was relieved. I was relieved that running from whatever my past was and avoiding all the legal system was now over. And now this journey going forward and a new life was about to happen. So I promised myself when I was in that holding cell and I sat back in the Federal Detention Center in Philadelphia, and I remember standing in the cell and I was butt naked because I was waiting for them to get me some clothes. And I remember thinking to myself, now is the time. You have to keep your glass half filled. You have to be positive and you have to learn everything you can about the experience. And boy, did I ever. I just soaked up everything. But the one thing that the resounding thing kept coming over and over again was that I was just like everybody else that was in there. We were all human beings. We were all wearing green uniforms. We were all the same. And I really cherished every opportunity to learn from everyone that I came in contact with, whether it was a drug dealer or a white crime defendant. It didn't matter. We were all wearing the same uniforms, and we had some story to tell. And I needed to tell my story, but more importantly, I needed to learn from everybody that was with me.
So it sounds like your method for coping in there was very similar to Viktor Frankel's. If you could find other people find meaning in their own journey, it could give you a little bit of strength and help you overcome some of the spinning out of control that derails success for so many people in there.
It was. And Viktor Frankel's book, if anyone can get it inside, and I read it 3 times while I was away. It was a very powerful book for me, and I still have it. I usually keep it on my desk somewhere so that I can look back. But it's one of those things where when you read it, his words chime true, and I really felt that I needed to learn and I needed to grow. And you learn in prison to check humility at the door. You're just you get strip searched, you get everything that could happen to you happens to you, and it becomes a matter of your own personal integrity and trying to better yourself.
So what were some of the strategies that you used to get through prison and help other people while you served multiple years inside of a federal prison?
So the first, many things, but the first thing I did was I knew in my mind that I needed to stay busy. So staying busy for me meant 2 things. Number 1, journaling. I journaled every day from the night that I came inside to the day that I left. And even to today, I still write. And the reason that I journal is because it just helps me think things through. It puts life in perspective, and it makes me reflect back on my day, the choices that I made, so that I can sort of give myself instant feedback. I also decided that I needed to read and better myself. So I started reading books as diligently as I can. I went through the library and read just about every book. By the time I had left, it was well over 1,000 books that I had read. And then I knew that I needed to give back a little while I was there because I wanted to learn from everybody. So I started teaching. I taught GED math. I taught political science. I taught public speaking. I taught business startup classes. I taught every class I could think of that would engage the men that I was with to help them when they left. And then I wrote. It was a matter of keeping busy and then learning. So every experience for me was about learning. I was involved with Unicor when I got to Canaan. And in Unicor, I learned things like operating a forklift because I had no idea what I'd be able to do when I got out. I knew I couldn't practice law again. I operated machinery and baling equipment. And then I learned how to change oil in a car in the garage. So all these things that I had never known before, I now was learning and it just couldn't get enough of learning how to change brakes on a car. I just needed to figure it out. And I realized that inside prison, so there are men inside prison, I'm sure women as well, that have so much talent and so much knowledge to offer that if you sit down and you can learn from them. There were some people I was away with that they could actually take an engine apart and put it together in a matter of hours, not days. And I needed to learn everything I could from them. And I did. I really did. And I thank every single one of them because they showed me so many things and taught me so many things. And then there was a religious perspective that I had because I'm Jewish. And I felt that I was for quite a while the only Jew at USP Canaan. And I needed to learn about all the religions. So I sat and called a prayer, and I went to the Christian services, and I talked to just about every different organization, religious organization, including we had a Native American Indian who was on our property and in our facility, and I learned from him. So there was so much that I learned, and I just needed to experience it, and I did. I like to point out takeaways that would have been helpful to me when I was going through multiple decades in prison by listening to a story like the one that Jeff is telling us. I mean, I went to prison as a young man without the skills that he has, and yet I'm listening to somebody who was a well-educated person, had gone to college, gone to law school, built a career as a trial lawyer for multiple decades, and yet when he found himself in prison, he didn't complain. He didn't whine about what happened to him. He didn't suggest that the Bureau of Prisons is responsible for teaching him new skills. What I heard from Jeff saying is he took action. He picked up books. He read.
He journaled, he wrote, he interviewed and learned from other people around him. He studied religions. He was humble and took himself to begin learning new skills that included blue-collar skills, such as changing oil or operating machinery. There was nothing he wouldn't do to begin sowing seeds for a better outcome. And if people in prison did that, they may find that when they return to society, more opportunities are opening for them. And because of the decisions they made inside, they've got a better shot of integrating in society successfully. And I know that that's something that Jeff is very passionate about now, helping other people integrate with society successfully. And I'd love for you to tell our audience a little bit about how you've done that, Jeff, and what you've learned in your new role as kind of a servant leader, helping other people transition into society successfully.
Sure. So when I came home, I was discharged September in 2015, and I just got very lucky. I had a difficult time finding employment. I had a difficult time. I mean, who was going to hire a 52-year-old or 53-year-old lawyer who, really wasn't able to practice law and did not really have any value in the legal field. So I just stumbled upon, I was walking down the street, walked into a community learning center, which was an adult literacy agency. And I said, look, I need to get out of the halfway house and I need something. And I said, I'll do anything. I'll take out the trash or answer the phones. And I taught GED math. And they said, well, we really need an instructor because we're laying all these people off. We can't afford to pay you much. I said, it doesn't matter. I'll take anything. I just need to get my feet in the door and get started. And they did. They gave me a position. And I started teaching GED math and doing other things around the building. And then several months later, I became a director. Remarkably, I was given the opportunity to do some things like start a reentry workshop at a CareerLink, which is a one-stop state agency that helps people find employment. And I was there for almost 2 years. And during that time, I was able to see from the grassroots in Philadelphia, some of the hardest to serve neighborhoods, what people really needed was they needed to find a career pathway. They needed to know and have a direction and get the understanding that they were not going to start at the upper level. They needed to start somewhere and learn everything they could so that they could move and progress up the ladder. I also learned that, when we return from prison, finding employment can be a challenge. But one thing you can't discredit is the things that you do while you're away. When you leave prison, everyone should have a resume. Take time, spend time, find people that you're around, and make sure that resume is solid. And don't just wipe off the things that you're doing away. I recently spoke with a number of people that were serving life in prison that are being resentenced because of a new Supreme Court case. And an elderly man raised his hand and said, Mr. A, I've been down for almost 47 years. And the last job I held was selling drugs in North Philadelphia. What could I possibly do when I get out? And I asked him, I said, what'd you do while you were away? And he said, I work in the kitchen. I was a steward for 7 years. I worked a prep line for 5 years. I helped with the menu. And he did all these things in a commercial kitchen. And I said to him, so let me understand. You served 1,800 meals 3 times a day for the last 15 years of your life. I said, you have some skills. Don't just discredit what you've done inside and try and learn. If they have opportunities for you to get certifications, whether it's an OSHA certification or a class certification or classes and opportunities to take, go and do it. Look into taking classes through in college or advancing your degree a little bit. Do whatever you can, whatever opportunities are available in prison. Don't just write them off because they become important later on to show that what you've done. I tell people all the time when they come out that they need to have their elevator pitch. They need to know what to say when somebody asks where they've been. And part of that is saying, you know what, it's not about what I did in the past, but it's about the lessons I learned since then. And when you leave prison, the second most important thing you need besides a resume is to have your elevator pitch down, to know what you're going to say, how you're going to address the past years of your life, and how you're going to explain the lessons that you learned. Because that's going to be the defining moment when you go into a job interview or you're talking to somebody upon your return about how they're going to deal with you and look at you in society.
And how are the people responding to this excellent advice that you are providing? Is it something that's totally new to them, or are they asking you for help in creating their elevator pitch? To walk us through how somebody who's been in jail for multiple decades and has never thought about this before, you're introducing this concept to them. Tell us about the receptivity to that advice.
They've been extremely receptive, but one thing that they need to do is they need to practice. And so what we do is we bring them in and we sit down and we have role plays where I'm a job interviewer and I need you to tell me, where you been? Explain what's happened. Tell me something about your life. And we sit down and we role play. And it's hard for people to understand and in part take responsibility for their story. I believe in transparency when you get out. I don't believe that you can play hide the ball anymore. In today's world, with Google and with background checks and everything else, you need to be able to say, I am a felon and I'm not proud of what I've done, but I'm proud of where I'm headed. And you need to be transparent. You need to be open and honest, and you need to own your story. If you own your story, people in society are so more receptive to listening and to trying to put themselves in their position. Look, right now, there's well over 70 million people in the United States that have criminal backgrounds. So the chances are likely, if you go to a job interview or you're talking to somebody on the streets, that if they don't have a criminal background, they very well might know somebody that does or has been through the system. And it's not, it's more acceptable in society and they're a little bit more understanding. But more importantly, they want to know that you've taken responsibility and that you own your own story. Not that, that prosecutor had it out for me, or that cop, or that judge, or that so-and-so. No, it's got to be about you. It's got to be about you taking responsibility and saying, you know what, I need to move forward and I'm changing my life. So people are really receptive when you sit down and you talk to them and you work with them. So you should work with, how are you going to describe the time that you've been away and what are the lessons that you've learned from it?
So in addition to helping people in prison transition successfully, tell us how this passion that you've had for working with other people, how did that influence the people who were supervising you after you got out of prison, like your probation officer? Well, how did they respond to you working with other people who had felony backgrounds and this commitment you have to teaching and showing them how to become successful people?
So I think out of everything I've done, that's been like the most bizarre for me to handle, because when I came home and I started as a director, now starting these programs, these reentry workshops and programs, I was finding that I was dealing with returning citizens every single day. People were coming home and they were coming to see me. They were being told by friends, go see Mr. A. And now probation and parole, both federal, state, and county, all refer to me. They're sending me on a regular basis all of the people that are coming home so that I can work with them. They've been extremely receptive. In the federal system, there's a program called PREP now, which is post-indictment but pre-sentencing, where we actually work with and talk to not only the defendants in the case, but their family, and explain, this is what the process is, this is what's going to happen, and take some of the mystery out of prison. I think the frustration from me and my family in a lot of what happened was the fact that we just didn't know what to expect. And if you can take some of that out of the picture, it makes it so much easier on families when they're going through the process. What's visitation like? What's it like when you come home? What's the monitoring like? And there are things that men and women need to know when they're inside and getting ready to come out. And I'll tell you from my experience, Michael, is that it is not a joyride. When you come home, don't think that you're in Disney World, because you're not. And the reality for me was I returned to Philadelphia and lived in a halfway house because I had very little money. I lived in a halfway house for almost 9 months, and I had more difficulty navigating that particular part of my reentry than I did my bit away. Quite honestly, but for the fact that I got a job, I had a hard time in my halfway house because it was recently shut down, but it just was not very good living conditions. There were illegal drugs in the house all the time. Food was barely edible. Toilet paper, finding toilet paper was a challenge. And I don't say this to to scare anyone that's coming out, just to educate you that, there are a lot of restrictions you're going to have when you come out. Play by the rules, try and follow them, but, lean upon your family members for support, and try and find those resources that are out in the community that can help you. And that is really why I do what I do today, is because I need to show people that there are some great agencies and programs and support tools that are out there for them that can help them get back on their feet and find that career.
So it's really admirable that you spend so much time working to help these people. And you've been out now for about 3 years now, Jeff?
Yes.
So during those 3 years, I am sure that you have seen both some success stories and some people who continued to struggle. Could you give us a story about somebody that continued to struggle and tell us, what you would have liked to have seen him do differently? And then after maybe I'll have some questions on that, then perhaps we can talk about a success story and see what can we learn from somebody who's really came back and done well.
Sure. So I'll give you some people that a story about somebody that struggled. I was recently able to refer someone for a job opportunity, and it was a forklift opportunity, and he certainly had done some forklift operation while he was away, and he came back and went to the job interview and did okay, but never told him about his past. And they knew that I referred him. So the employer was a felony-friendly employer, and it was kind of a test for them to see whether he was going to be transparent and open and honest with them about his past. And then he got the job despite that. They already knew that about his background. But then his first week, he showed up late 4 days in a row. If you're going to come back, and you need to take responsibility for what you do in life. And that means when you go to an employer and you secure a job, you need to be on time. You're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt anymore. You're not going to be given any excuses. You're going to need to be accountable. And that's also because probation and parole are going to be looking, and they're going to be making sure that you're there. They're going to call your employer. So one of our failures, now recently we were able to work with this gentleman and kind of tell him what he needed, what skills he needed to be successful at work. You need to be on time. You need to dress appropriately, all those types of things. And we recently were able to place him in another job, but we're really hoping that he's learned some of those lessons. So the challenge for us has really been trying to get people to take responsibility when they get employed. And that was one of the ones that, although he didn't go back inside and he hasn't been violated or anything like that, as far as his probation or parole, we want to see people take a job and then retain it and stay with it. So for me, that was a failure because I put somebody in a job and they weren't there for a long period. And on the other hand, we've had some tremendous success stories. We placed somebody in a manufacturing job recently, and he moved all the way up to a head dispatcher. And then this past New Year's Eve, sent us pictures that he got married on New Year's Eve and sent us pictures of his new wife. And he's moving up, and he's really content. And he realized that he couldn't start as a dispatcher, so he needed to start on the ground floor of the manufacturing plant, and then gradually moved up to where his passion was, which was dispatching, and that's what he had done before. So those kinds of success stories. But there, it was about lessons. It was about him learning the company. It was about him learning the job and then being able to move forward.
Yeah, so we're back to takeaways again. It's really important that when an employer has the courage to overlook our criminal background and open an opportunity for us to work, well, we've got to prove worthy of that opportunity by showing up early, not showing up late, by thinking about how we can add value, how we can bring that employer more sales or better relationships with customers or better relationships, including building the culture of the workforce that the employer has at his place of business. So that's something that's really important for people in prison to understand, is that the earlier you can start building those soft skills that allow you to smile and shake hands and be friendly and punctual, those are the types of skills that are going to lead to an advancement on the job. And you heard that from the person you just described that was successful. That person recognized he could start at the ground floor on the warehouse floor and then advance and advance and advance. And there are so many stories in society of people who've come out of prison that didn't live on the margins. By the time they were a couple of years into their career, they were, homeowners and had credit and were living a life of meaning and fulfillment and relevance. And I know that's what Jeff and his team is trying to do to help more people come back that way. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your team, Jeff, and the group that you're working with and the number of people that you serve.
So our team is it's relatively small, but we have a number of contractors that work throughout with our team. We're approximately 8 people, but we have a team of subcontractors that have lived experience. They're people that have been through the system. They're people that have been incarcerated, and that can tell you and work with our people, and they can relate. They understand, and we're able to gain the trust of the people that are coming out to say, look, we've been there. We get it. We understand it. But this is what you need to do. And we have those frank discussions about the hard things they need to know. You need to take a shower. You need to smell good when you go to an employer and brush your teeth and look good. And you need clothing. We'll help you find a place to get clothing. So we have those tough discussions with them. Our staff is very dedicated. We're dedicated because we don't just believe in finding that job. You can't come to us and say we'll take anything. We need to know what your passion is, because people that are happy and passionate about what they do end up staying at that job a lot longer than people that are just frying fries or flipping burgers just to get by, because in a week or two, they're going to come back to us and say, I need something better. So it can't be about that. It needs to be about finding that career opportunity and starting your life over again. So our team really works hard at that. The other thing that I would encourage men and women that are away to do is, and this is hard, is to stay up with technology. In today's world, one of the biggest barriers we have is that you need to be digitally literate. You need to know how to use a computer and operate a computer and get around. And inside, oftentimes, we don't have that opportunity. So when you have an opportunity to email or to get on the computer and just play around and move the mouse around and do things that those are skills that you need to work on while you're away, and take every opportunity you can to do it. Because when you come home, quite honestly, that's the way of the world today. If you want to file a job application today, just about every job application is done online. And you need to be able to move around and navigate a computer no matter how long you've been away. That's irrelevant. So you need to work on those skills while you're away and try and take advantage of the time to, even through simple emails, just to cut and paste something and work on those skills, because that is one of the biggest barriers. So my agency works with giving soft skill development and working with people and teaching them what they need to know to be successful and preparing them for the job market, and not just getting them placed, because that's not what we're about.
So curiously, how are the employers that you are reaching out to and asking them to build these bridges between the formerly incarcerated and the labor market? Tell us a little bit about how they are responding to this innovative program that you've created.
They're extremely receptive for 2 reasons. Number one is because they know that there are some benefits that are available to them. First, they're getting skilled talent, because many people that are coming out have skills that they've done for years and years that they're really proficient at. So they're getting skilled talent at a level that they may not be able to find elsewhere. And second is that they're realizing that there's some other benefits to hiring returning citizens, and we need to be able to push those as well. For example, the federal work opportunity tax credit that they can get, or local tax credits. In Philadelphia, there's a tax credit program that can give an employer up to $5,000 for hiring a returning citizen. Those benefits are really important for people to know when they come home, so that when they go to that job interview and they get the interview, they can say, I really think you should look into this opportunity to get a tax credit for hiring me. And employers want to hear that. They want to know that those opportunities are there. And more and more employers are becoming engaging, and they're realizing that there is a talent pool out there that's been sort of brushed aside. For us, we also offer a service where we're sort of the connector. If there's a problem with a payroll check, or if they're not sure about something in the employment, or if an employer's not sure of why somebody hasn't shown up to work, they'll often call us and say, so-and-so didn't show up today. What's going on? Can you look into this for us? And because we have an ongoing relationship with are the people that we work with, we'll call and follow up and see what the problem is.
That's super awesome. Do you have a website or some place that people can learn a little bit more about your organization?
Sure. So the name of my organization is called the National Workforce Opportunity Network. We call it NWON.
The National, one more time, I want to write it down to make sure I have it correctly. The National what?
National Workforce Opportunity Network. And we call it NWON, NWON. And you can find us at nwonpa.com.
Excellent. So Jeff, we've come to the end of our episode today. Maybe I would like to give you the last word of advice. We are, as we discussed earlier, we try to provide these programs to people in prisons across the United States. And we're currently going into the New York City Department of Corrections, which is not too far away from you. Perhaps you can give some bit of advice for people who are in there right now and thinking about what can they do with their time inside to prepare for success. I heard a lot of takeaways from you, but maybe you just have a couple of points that you'd like to leave them with.
Sure. I think there's two that I like to leave them with. One is that keep your glass always half filled, and try and remember that this is all part of life's journey. And your job is to try and figure out why this has happened to you, and more importantly, what the lessons are. So keep focused on coming home and starting over, and don't look at this as the last of your penalty phase, but look at this as a new opportunity, an opportunity to do something that you've always wanted to do in your life and to find the passion that's in your belly that will keep you happy. And cherish the small things. When you're inside, stay connected with your family, stay connected with your friends. And, Martin Luther King has a wonderful saying. He once said that in the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And, keeping those relationships is also a very challenging thing to do while you're away, but it's also really important for when you come home. So write those letters and keep in contact with people when you come home, so you have your network that you can go to and say, look, I need some help trying to find a job, and get out there. But keep your glass half filled. That's, I guess, the big thing for me.
Well, I'm so grateful to Jeffrey Abramowitz from the National Workforce Opportunity Network. It's nwonpa.com. That's nwonpa.com. He is a real role model, a servant leader who went into prison as a well-educated man and came back to society with hopes of helping more people who've lived in struggle return to society successfully. And I encourage you to visit his website at nwonpa.com. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about prison professors, visit us at prisonprofessors.com, and we will do our best to continue this passion that we have of helping more people who go through the criminal justice system come back successfully. And I'm glad that we'll be able to share this message of Jeff's inside of prisons across the United States. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll be back tomorrow with another inspiring guest. And